With the virus still entering the country almost 2 years after the incursion, it means these farms might never get off the ground again.
Well, the reality is I have 3 children who are studying marine science, and we don't know what the future is for them. All of that's just been thrown into the air now. Life as we know it is not as it was.
The friction between global commerce and the need to protect Australia's biodiversity is not confined to seafood. The nation's sea trade is predicted to double over the next 20 years, raising the risk of far more damaging disease incursions and putting at risk Australia's multi-billion-dollar export industry. With expanding international trade has come expanding opportunities for corruption.
I think it was widely known that when you go to inspections, not everything was there. Some importers would actually sell a lot of the stock before you'd even get there. You do a carton count and the stuff would be gone.
Michael Jurek knows all about gaming the system because he used to do it himself. As a mobile quarantine inspector crisscrossing Western Sydney, Jurek was left on his own to police food importers. A decade ago, he began collecting secret payments from those very importers to help them navigate Australia's biosecurity defences. And he kept it all very quiet.
Well, you were holding out to these businesses the opportunity of inside information.
Correct.
And the reason you didn't tell your bosses in the department about your moonlighting is because you knew you'd be stopped and you wanted the money.
I knew I'd be stopped, but yeah, I did like helping importers and I did like that sort of things. And yeah, I mean, the money was reasonably good at the time.
You took almost $200,000 from importers in a corrupt arrangement, didn't you?
Well, some would view corrupt, but yes, I did take that amount of money, but that was over a 8-year period.
2 years ago, Michael Jurek pleaded guilty to corrupt conduct. He says he regrets what he's done and claims there were other corrupt officers in the department's ranks.
I believe that there was other officers that were either taking money for financial benefit in regards to providing information to importers or actually threatening importers from losing their quarantine licences.
In the past 5 years, 6 officials have been sacked by the department following corruption-related investigations. The department told Four Corners another employee is currently suspended, pending an ongoing investigation.
There was other activities people were doing outside of quarantine as well that people didn't know about. People were running their own individual businesses that were also not declared. I think that was sort of rife in the department.
It's not the only time the federal government has been hoodwinked by ruthless importers. In another stunning breach of biosecurity, which has been kept secret until now, it was Australia's beef industry in the firing line. At risk, a $50 billion hit to the Australian economy.
Well, what protected Australia from foot and mouth was sheer luck. Had any of that material that we'd imported contained that virus, there was effectively a wire fence separating that from the rest of Australia's herd.
The imported product this time was a critical ingredient in the production of vaccines. It's called fetal bovine serum, or FBS.
They are used a lot in producing this next generation of pharmaceutical drugs, targeted immunotherapeutics for things like cancer. So some of the very modern drugs that are coming onto the market now have been grown up in these sorts of fertilisers.
It's derived from the blood of unborn cattle and its sales now form a massive global market.
The global trade in FBS is enormous. Millions of litres produced every year from around the world. It's the Australian and New Zealand serum, however, which is hugely expensive.
Welcome to PAA Laboratories.
Australia's serum is highly prized because our cattle are free of serious diseases such as foot and mouth.
PAA Laboratories is now part of GE Healthcare Life Sciences.
In 2011, the multinational GE announced it was buying an international serum company called PAA Laboratories, with a manufacturing plant in Brisbane.
Partner operations in over 50 countries.
At the time, it was very exciting news for us in the whole team that I led here in Australia.
Hello.
For GE Healthcare's Brian Hood, it all changed with a late-night phone call in March 2013. There was something wrong with the serum PAA had been importing.
This phone call arrived about 9 p.m. on Saturday night. I reached for the phone and it's my boss, my manager in Japan. She launched straight into, Brian, there is serious concerns about the Brisbane facility. She then went on to tell me that the GE security team were now posted at the site and the site was in complete lockdown. I was to get on a flight first thing on Tuesday morning. I was told that all employees were to arrive to work and were to be immediately given a letter and sent home while we continued to secure the site. I had never experienced anything like that in my working career up to this point, and really had no idea what I was walking into.
GE had discovered that some of PAA's imported serum had been smuggled past Australia's biosecurity controls.
We were starting to have some serious concerns about the actual source material. Where was it coming from? Who was providing it? And how were they getting so much of it without proper documentation? In the end, I think we found some pretty compelling information to say that this material was more than likely sourced from Brazil and Argentina rather than Australia. And I think that was probably the point where all of us had deep intakes of breath thinking this was really serious.
The reason it's so serious is that Brazil and Argentina have been hotbeds of foot and mouth disease. In April 2013, GE issued a worldwide recall of PAA's fetal bovine serum.
In April 2013, GE sent a notice through to all of its customers, essentially recalling a lot of its products issued by PAA and notifying them that from their investigations between 2008 and 2013, substantial quantities of product had been adulterated with various non-serum products, and more seriously, serum products from non-approved countries.
Brazil and Argentina was specifically banned by quarantine here in Australia, particularly any product in its raw form. These products come from countries where there is known foot and mouth disease, there's known mad cow disease. So to find evidence that this was here and present in the products that were being made here in Australia was obviously seriously concerning.
PAA had been getting past Australia's border officials by mislabelling foreign serum as low-risk laboratory fluids rather than as blood products.
They were receiving that product unfrozen. And I think that's really key because a frozen product or a frozen biological product would typically raise more concern for quarantine agents as it's coming into the country.
GE launched a forensic investigation of PAA's production methods.
It was like a rotten onion. we were peeling away a layer to find a more rotten layer underneath. So everywhere we turned, everywhere we looked, things were getting worse in terms of what was actually going on at Brisbane.
The mislabelling scheme dated all the way back to 2007. In an internal company email seen by Four Corners, a PAA executive instructs an employee to prepare fake documents to smuggle products into Australia. I need a little bit of paper, as the whole thing has to be officially imported into foreign countries. Of course, this is all fake, but paper makes everything beautiful. The products, once they were mislabelled as Australian, were then re-exported to Europe to be sold at higher prices.
How many litres of that suspect FBS from South America, thinking all the way back to 2007, had been circulated in and out of Australia in that time?
Tens of thousands of litres. Tens of thousands. Hard to put an estimate on it, but yeah, well in excess of 50 or 60,000 litres. The heart of it was money. When you can buy a product, raw product, for 50 or 60 euros per litre and sell that as a finished product to an end user of over $1,000 a litre, there was enormous amounts of money to be made.
The Department of Agriculture launched one of the biggest investigations in the agency's history into the PAA scam. But 5 years later, there have been no charges laid against any PAA employee over the extraordinary quarantine breach. And the conduct of the investigation has only raised more questions about the capacity of the agency to protect the country's biodiversity.
GE obviously announced in 2013 that they had discovered that for 5 years PAA had been doing this. The department have got extensive powers to investigate the GE, and nothing's happened.
In 2013, investigators did seize records and serum from PAA's Brisbane factory. And they also targeted the company's local suppliers, which they suspected of being involved. This company, Sera, in Rutherford, New South Wales, was raided too. Its director, Thomas Gurman, denies any involvement.
Okay. Well, the thing, of course, I want to ask you about is your relationship with PAA.
A search warrant was also executed at Serana in Bunbury, Western Australia. Its production manager, Jarrett Cambites, says the raid damaged the company's reputation and forced it to shift its headquarters to Germany. He says the claim that they were involved in the PAA scam is nonsense.
Just for the record, is there any truth to those allegations?
No.
But in respect of serum, fetal bovine serum, tell me the countries from which it was sourced in this operation here.
We sourced our fetal bovine serum exclusively from Australian sources.
Just for the record, did Serana ever import into Australia any biological material from Central or South America?
From Central or South America, never, no.
Serana's owner, Tamara Cambites, would not re-enter Australia.
But when you were up and running...
We interviewed her in Singapore.
Well, I used to travel probably every three or 4 weeks.
Do you fear being arrested if you go into Australia?
I wouldn't doubt it. Let's say at the moment, I do not feel comfortable with the current public officials or their way of conduct or how they treat people. Yes, I would think, yeah, that would be another possibility, or I don't know.
Tamara Cambites has fought back against the investigation, twice defeating the government in court. She's been lobbying for compensation. But Four Corners has confirmed that investigators are finalising briefs of evidence against both Sera and Serana to be assessed by prosecutors.
I thought it is finished. Last year I thought that. But I've just recently heard that it is not and that it is still ongoing. But like I said, I don't think it's an investigation. I think it's a witch hunt.
I felt, I'm not speaking on behalf of any of my former colleagues here, but I felt that we did not have the evidence on Serana. Certainly there was a high degree of suspicion, but not the evidence. And I personally wouldn't have pursued Serana.
Brian Hood, the former GE manager, believes the Department of Agriculture has mishandled the investigation and should have been more focused on PAA.
I'm, to this day, remain surprised that more hasn't come of the investigation in terms of who's involved and why there hasn't been more made of it in the courts.
We know the department's been very active publicly about the prosecution of our client, and they've been wholly unsuccessful.
The challenge for Australia is in defeating international syndicates determined to evade detection. Four Corners has gained a rare insight into this corporate conspiracy, obtaining the minutes of a critical meeting of PAA executives in Europe where the company decided evidence of the scam would be destroyed. The meeting decided to delete obvious origin-related information, and detailed instructions were given on how, including that catalogue numbers should be deleted, along with stock entry tables, the audit trail of batch lists, all sensitive emails, and any other suspicious files.
Wherever possible, emails, documents on servers were removed, and there was in fact an external company employed by PAA to assist in this task. So a specialist company was brought in to help sanitise the information.
In Brisbane, PAA's local manager was Rainer Waldman. He too instructed staff to delete emails.
Mr. Waldman, hello. It's Linton Besser from Four Corners. I just wanted to give you my card. And I wanted to ask you why it was that you got sacked by GE.
No comment.
What happened with that?
His role in the affair remains under investigation by the Department of Agriculture. Had there been foot and mouth virus in the PAA serum, Australia would have come perilously close to a national disaster. That's because the suspect serum was in fact being used directly with live cattle.
Yeah, this is a very sad situation. This is the one that probably hurt us the most locally in Australia and New Zealand.
PAA's conspiracy to mislabel foreign serum was no minor biosecurity breach. Here at this CSIRO facility near Armidale in New South Wales, the dodgy serum was being used in live cattle. It meant that in the end, Australia's last line of defence against a potentially devastating disease outbreak was no more than a wire fence.
CSIRO, I understand, were using that product to grow stem cells and then injecting those stem cells unpurified back into live cattle at a station in Armidale. So I immediately felt this was a heightened biosecurity risk, and we were able to pretty well definitively establish that the product that had been injected was from Brazil and Argentina.
The cattle were now a potential biohazard and had to be destroyed. The CSIRO did not want to be interviewed after reaching a legal settlement with GE.
Good morning, how are you?
What are you doing here? Excuse me, can you stop filming?
Do you want me to stop filming?
Yeah.
Stop filming? Okay.
The Department of Agriculture says its investigation has been long-running because of its complexity and the time needed to secure overseas export records. Four Corners has learned the department is currently holding 13,000 litres of tainted serum. It says the serum poses an unacceptable biosecurity risk.
Australia has a reputation globally, which is only ever growing, for the clean, green image of our farm and farm produce. That needs to be protected, in my view. We are receiving price premiums for a lot of our produce because of that.